Well, good afternoon, members. I'm Marquita Garner-Walters, your Secretary for the Department of Children and Family Services, and I really appreciate you sticking around and hearing us today because we really wanted to talk to you. Carrie's done a great job, and a lot of my presentation is what she said. I promise you I won't say it all again. We did give you, that's okay, we did give you a PowerPoint, and also we gave you copies of, by your district, the amount of SNAP recipients in your district and the vendors that take the EBT card so that you have that information and can see what kind of economic impact the SNAP program has in your district. So as Carrie said, our mission is keeping children safe. That's our child welfare part. Helping families become self-sufficient, that's the family support part, and then providing safe refuge, which is obviously the emergency part. So I'm going to hit a couple of places that I want you to look at, in particular on the top of page 4 in this PowerPoint. It shows you the average caseload that is recommended by national professional standards for child abuse, for foster care cases. We are asking you, and I know that there's a budget crisis, I'm well aware of that. We are asking you for 50 positions in child welfare and the $2.2 million that it will take to fund those positions in State General Fund. We continue to be very high over our caseload. Carrie showed you the slide that showed the projection, the decrease in staff that we have had over the years in this department. Child welfare is a human service that cannot be automated. It must be done by people, and we don't have enough people taking care of the children that are the most fragile children in our state, the children that have been abused and cannot live in their own homes, or who we're trying to stabilize in their homes and do intensive services wrapped around those families to keep them in their homes and prevent the trauma of taking them out of their home, because foster care is a trauma. Taking a kid away from their home, no matter how bad the abuse is, when you take a child away from everything they know, that's a horrific experience for that child, even if they're being hurt in that place. It takes even more work and time and energy and attention in the home by our workers to do those intensive early prevention services that we're trying to do more of and to reduce the number of kids in foster care. So I'll come back to that, but I wanted you to pay attention to that one because we're asking for stuff. I do want to talk about our COVID response in child welfare because it has really been tremendous, and I'm thrilled to say that our foster parents have been phenomenal. We did not have a foster parent disruption, is what we call it, when a foster parent calls us and says, come in, this is kid, come get them. I just can't deal with them. They're not fitting into my family. They're not working in this house. Their behavior's too out of control. I can't manage them. During this COVID crisis, we didn't have a single foster parent disruption except for our 2 foster parents that died due to COVID. And in one of those instances, the daughter was able to step up and say, I'm not letting them go, this is my family. And she kept them. And so that's amazing, and I'm just so proud of the foster parents that have stuck with us. We immediately made some policy changes to live in a stay-at-home environment. So we worked with our court system first because the child welfare system is a partnership with the courts. We don't do anything by ourselves. And so we do that in partnership with the courts. We implemented talking to our foster parents at least weekly with our staff. So the foster care worker that normally would be making visits in the home was on the phone talking to the parents every week. We also had home development staff filling in and making those calls. Those are normally the staff that are out looking for foster homes because we're always recruiting new foster homes. And so much so that some of our foster parents said, okay, you guys quit calling. I'll call you if you need me, if I need you, but don't call me 5 times this week. We gave foster homes and our kids and our birth parents cell phones and tablets so that they could have virtual visits and be able to see each other and stay connected through this crisis. That really worked so well that we're changing our policy about how we're going to give phones to our youth. Our older youth especially, we realized that the time they had with their parent shot up because they had control of a phone that they could text their birth parents. And so the interaction between birth and our older youth really went up. We created a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week hotline that foster parents could call anytime, day or night, if they had a crisis. We provided reimbursements for them for babysitting and peer support, like working. If I'm a foster parent and I have other foster parents that I know that are kind of in my network, we could get together as long as we were social distancing and didn't have, we're following stay at home. And so we traded out babysitting, and we paid for that for our foster parents. We also created a practice team that was on call to go kind of a step beyond what just that hotline was. But when a worker would call and say, I'm talking to this foster parent and they're having this issue, then we would have a manager, a supervisor, and a peer worker get together and say, okay, well, if this were my family and this were my case, how would I manage it? And then they would work with the worker to say, well, did you try this or did you try that, or have you thought about doing it this way? We put part of our training online for our foster parents that were really close to hitting certification, and then they had to stop because of the stay-at-home order. So we finished that training for them so they could go ahead and get their certification, because we need every foster parent we can get. Excuse me. The reports of abuse have gone down. Carrie mentioned that. We don't think child abuse has gone down. We think the reports have gone down because they're not in school and they're not seeing their teachers, who are number one mandated reporters. They're not going to the doctor and getting their checkups, and they're going to the dentist, and those are mandated reporters where we get a lot of our information from. And then law enforcement is not coming out as often even. And so we do believe that we will see a spike as phase 2 and phase 3 roll and kids are more out and available to be seen by other people. But even with the crisis, we had 125 children that came into care during the peak of, so like from the middle of March to the end of April, that had to come into care. We paid really close attention, Senator Johns, to adoption. We had a lot of fun with some of our judges that did Zoom adoptions and did virtual adoptions. One of our judges had a great big giant teddy bear, and the kids could take their picture virtually. I don't know how that worked, but then they could post their pictures and they could send to families, and it was really fun. We had 105 adoptions that were finalized from the middle of March to the end of May. There were 169 adoptions in that same time period last year. So it's a drop, and we know that every single child that we have that is freed for adoption, that's in an adoption placement, we want that adoption to happen as quickly as possible because we want our kids in their forever families. And so, and every day that you wait, when you're waiting to be adopted, is one day too long. So we want those adoptions to happen. And just a note for you to know, members, that Governor Edwards is one of a handful of governors that are a bipartisan national call to action of governors trying to help their state child welfare agency smooth adoptions for the children that are in their caseload that have their parents' rights have been terminated. We call that freed. They're freed for adoption, but there's no adoptive placement for them. So there's no family identified. They're in foster care, and unless a family member surfaces or an adoption placement happens, somebody comes up that wants to adopt them, these are the children that will age out of foster care. And there are 339 of those children right now in Louisiana. And across the country, there are about 25,000. And we are trying to make sure that those numbers go down. And Governor Edwards is one of the, I think there are 6 co-chairs of this. So then that's all I'll say around child welfare. In our family support side, I want to take this opportunity to introduce to you our new Assistant Secretary for this office, Shavonna Howard. Shavonna, wave. You may want to hear from her. Shavonna comes to us from Washington State. We went to Washington last November after Thanksgiving to look at what they were doing with their SNAP workforce programs, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Washington was the state that everybody goes to look and see how they're doing their work. And so we recruited her to bring her here, and remarkably, she said yes. She started in the middle of the pandemic. Her first day was April 1st, and it wasn't April Fool's, right? And so God love her, she has jumped in full force and is really going to help us a lot. We're thrilled to have her. There are 3 things in this that I want to draw your attention to. We are shifting our focus to workforce initiatives, and we really want to be responsive and help our people that are on public assistance get off of public assistance and be able to go into meaningful work that will pay them a livable wage where they don't have to depend on public services. So we're re-engineering our approach to that. And one of the programs that we went to Washington to look at was how they were taking their SNAP employment and training dollars. That's not the money that's the benefit to the family. That's not the cash assistance on the food stamp card. This is a separate bucket of federal money that if you are a business and you are training people, getting them into a job, and they happen to currently be on the SNAP roll, you can be reimbursed for half of the cost of your training program. So it's not a grant and it's not a match, it's a reimbursement. You have to spend the money. So like in New Orleans, we have Liberty's Kitchen and Cafe Reconcile, 2 programs that, actually we have several in New Orleans, but those 2 in particular are food industry programs, teaching you back office, front office, serving, food management, warehousing, besides the cooking and being a chef and learning how to do all of those pieces. If they spend $100 on a SNAP on somebody that's in their program that happens to be on SNAP, they get $50 back from what they spent. So they have to spend the money, but then they get reimbursed by the feds. So that is one big program that we are trying to grow. We currently have about 17 or 18 partners in that work now. They can be nonprofits, they can be for-profits. Right before COVID-19 hit, we were about to sign an agreement with the community and technical college system where they're going to be able to do this and receive this money. And so we're real excited about that and hope to get back on track with that here very quickly. You saw in what Carrie said that there are 40 TO for the STEP program. This is all federal money, but we need the TO for it. It is a program that we are bringing over from the Workforce Commission back to DCFS. We used to have it years ago. It moved over to Workforce. We're bringing it back, and so it's federally funded, but we need the TO to come with it. Workforce had used job appointments, and that just didn't work out as well as we think it will work if we have people that are employed to do the work. Then we have 5 TO that go with that again, federally funded, don't need the money, but need the positions. This is important to us because we use a lot of job appointments, and we're trying to move people out of job appointments into permanent employment because they are permanent employees of ours that will work in that.
Madam Secretary, Senator Henry, I'm going to let him ask you a question real quick.
The TOs you're talking about, earlier you said you needed 50.
That's child welfare.
That's a different. So this
That's
is a different
This
request.
is a different bucket.
So it's unrelated to the 50.
Unrelated.
Okay, I just want to.
Right. This is 45 total, no money because it's all federal, but I need the TO.
So you need 45 TOs. Additional TOs, and you can't use. Well, I'll ask you a question, but you can't use. We'll wait till you finish the thing. Gotcha.
And then the second thing in this bucket, I do want to talk about our SNAP applications for a minute because we did break records with COVID-19. We had over 213,000 applications come in between the middle of March and the end of May. You might wonder how we process 213,000 applications because we certainly do not have staff capacity to do that. We put everybody on mandatory overtime. We had 60-hour weeks. They had long days. We pulled everybody from every part of the agency that we could train and put into that program to be processing the applications. We are... it was unbelievable. That's all I can say. I'm amazed at how our SNAP staff, that's a tongue twister, responded during this crisis. The feds gave us some leeway and some waivers that really helped us. They gave us a waiver that immediately let us give everybody up to the maximum benefit, because when you apply for SNAP and you're approved, you might not get everything that you're eligible for, depending on your household composition. You might not get the maximum allotted. And so this allowed us to put everybody up at maximum. They let us waive some interview processes that we have to do. They let us waive the 6 months check-in that you have to do with us, because if you're on SNAP every 6 months, we have to make sure your circumstances haven't changed and haven't gotten a job and just didn't tell us. So we're constantly checking on that. And they let us waive the QA process, so we were able to pull all the staff that normally do that and put them on processing this massive amount of applications. They are now down to about 13,000, which is our normal, and so we're back into a normal rhythm. The last thing I would like to talk about in this bucket of work is the pandemic EBT, which is different from disaster food stamps, and that's where I was going. Okay. So the pandemic EBT is a one-time payment to families whose children would have been on free and reduced lunch if they had still been in school. So for the days that they were out of school and not getting breakfast and lunch, it's a $285 payment lump sum. Everybody same thing, because they know exactly how much it costs to feed kids, $5 something a day. And so if you are in a school where you were receiving free and reduced lunch, you were eligible for this. This is a program from the feds that was through the Department of Education, but we're the bank because we hold the food stamp money. So it was a joint project with us to get these cards out. You had to apply because we didn't have the capacity, because of a quirk in our law, to get the information and just load it on cards and send it to people. So it was a joint partnership, and we've done really well. Out of the about 650,000 children that are eligible for it, we've already had over 400,000 apply for it and be approved. The deadline goes through June 15th to keep applying. We have devoted Saturday mornings on our call center for any families who don't have access to the internet or whose first language is not English and might have trouble trying to do the application. So those are the things I wanted to point out in FS. And then we come to emergency preparedness.
Okay, can I stop right there and
Yes,
go
sir.
back? When you talk about the SNAP for children, the free and reduced lunch stipend or whatever you want to call it. So how long is that available for?
When we turned in our plan, we had to put a time frame on it, and we said June 8th, but we've extended that to June 15th.
So let me ask you this.
Excuse me.
If you had a family that didn't apply, didn't know to, and they come and apply now, do you retroactive back with them or no?
Yes, it's the same amount of money. It's $285 period.
Oh,
because they're
a lump.
paying.
It's not
it's
per
a lump.
week. Okay.
Right. No, it's the exact amount that the school would
Who
have
would have
paid to
that free
feed
and
them.
reduced lunch?
Right.
I understand
for
that.
those 45 or 65 days that they miss school.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So we were already doing sheltering in a new way, because we are responsible for shelter. And so in COVID-19, of course, we weren't trying to put people in congregate care, but there were people that needed sheltering. So we partnered with the Lieutenant Governor, and we opened at state parks in South, Central, and North Louisiana at Bayou Signet, Chico State Park, and Lake Bistineau. We took the cabins, and with the Department of Health, because they had the medical staff, we have the logistical piece, getting the people registered, making sure the wraparound services are there, they're getting fed, they're getting the phone to talk back and forth to people on. We have had 196 staff so far that have worked through those staffing those state parks. The people coming to the state park could be homeless, could be a soldier that is in the National Guard that's on active duty and got sick, could be a younger person who had an elderly person in their home and they got sick and couldn't go home to shelter because then they would have affected somebody in their home, or vice versa, an elderly person who lived with a family and didn't want to go back and infect their family. So we've had 262 or so people come through that state park sheltering system. They were in cabins or in campers, depending on where they were at the state park. We also there was an outbreak of COVID in a couple of our crawfish processing plants, so we housed those people while they recovered. So that we were feeling like pretty good. We're going to, calm down. COVID, the numbers are going down. We're also working at the convention center where the, hospital had been set up at Moriel. We are staffing that as well. Ready to breathe. And now here comes Cristobal. So all of our staff are on advised status. That's our basic first level of status. But in Alexandria, where we have the mega shelter, and in Shreveport, where we have another large shelter, we have put those staff on the next level up. That's the alert status. And I had a call this morning with one of my staff from Shreveport, and I just want to share it with you because I think it exemplifies who DCFS is. She has an underlying condition. She's been working from home. She's been scared to come to the office. And she, without being asked, went to her doctor, got a release so that she could work because she said, Marquita, you count on me. I'm in charge of sheltering. I staff shelters up here. That's one of my primary responsibilities, and I've got to get back to work for you. And so that's who we are. We meet people at their point of need. In their most fragile state, whether it's in child abuse, whether it's hungry, whether it's a mother that needs child support, whether it's somebody that has a disability that is trying to get the federal Social Security, or whether they're in a storm. The other ask that I have for you is the 50 TO for child welfare. That is TO and the $2.2 million that it takes to fund that. I can't say enough about the men and women that work in this department. they are superheroes. They step up. We're not designated as first responders, but we are first responders. We are on the front line in a storm. We are on a front line with child abuse. And when we send a child abuse investigator out to a home, they don't know what's behind that door. It could be a meth lab. It often is. There's a lot of drugs in our child abuse families. It could be a very angry person who doesn't want us to take their child away that might have a weapon. We don't know that when we send them out. And then we sent them out in COVID-19. And we were on a wait list for PPE because we weren't medical. And so we had to send our staff out. We had to beg, borrow, and steal from the local plants around town to get PPE for our staff until the supply caught up with the demand and we could get it through our own mechanism at GOSEP. But our staff went. They were scared, but they went because that's what they do. And that is who we are at DCFS. We always step up. Don't we, Senator? We always step up. I will tell you that we have 6 foster youth that turned 21 during this time frame, and we didn't just let them go because they were over 21. We know where every single one of them are. We've got our arms around them, and we're giving them everything they need. We are in contact with, we didn't get to have our foster youth intern program this year, but we've been working with all our kids and keeping them up to date. They had a bill that they wanted to bring this session that they're going to have to bring next time, and they were very disappointed they didn't get to be here. We had a couple of graduations. Jarvis graduated from Grambling with a master's degree in social work, and we had to do his graduation virtually. We had another one of our extended foster youth whose home burned to the ground. And so we have our arms around her, making sure that she's okay and that she'll be taken care of. And members, I say all that to say, I know it's a bad time to be asking for money, but I don't care because it's my job to tell you what we need, and it's your job to figure out how to fund it. And so I'm asking you to figure out how to give us $2.2 million to fund those 50 child welfare positions because we desperately need them. And I will stop at that.
Okay, thank you, Madam Secretary. Senator Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Secretary. And the child welfare positions that you're in need of. I mean, as I heard Carrie talk about earlier, you're down over 500 TOs from just a few years ago. How many of those you think were actually in child welfare? Just approximately.
Well, Senator, when I was the child welfare director under Governor Blanco, I had 1,800 staff. Dr. Hodnett has 1,500 or 1,300, so she's down about 500.
She's down about 500.
Yeah. And so the numbers surprise me because we're down more than that. I guess it's depending on how far back.
How far back you go.
That's how far back you go. Because when we left at the end of the blank, we had 5,200 staff when we were DSS. And when I came back, we had 3,200. So that's 2,000 lost, but a lot of that work went with it when it moved to other places, like the step work went over to workforce. And so there was a net loss of about 500. So I would say we're 1,500 down. But we made changes, and we went online and food stamps, and so things changed. But in child welfare, the work didn't change.
Right. And that's really the critical need in your agency when you're dealing with vulnerable children.
Yes, sir.
So I'll put the pencil to it. 2.2 million. That's about 44,000 per employee, but that includes retirement, benefits.
No, sir. Eric Current, Undersecretary. 2.2 million is the state general fund request.
Right.
Yeah. So and that's so the average salary I think in child welfare is around 44,000, and then you have 40%. So The 2.2 million is just the state general fund.
Okay.
Then there's a request of 1.2, 1.3 of federal authority. But that comes, we don't need anything. We get a match, for the state general fund.
Oh, okay, you get the match on that. Okay, good deal. So I want to commend you on the virtual adoptions. I think that's pretty neat. A Zoom adoption, huh? Mm-hmm. Never heard of such. I didn't know what Zoom was 3 months ago, but
I think we all know a lot more about Zoom than we want to.
All right, I want to commend you for your national award this past year. Secretary Walters was recognized in Washington, D.C. for her work on foster care and adoption, and I've been to that event myself in the past. And
yes, sir.
For the newer members that are here, we actually have a Senate and House coalition on foster care and adoption. I'm the Senate chairman. Former Representative Walt Leger was the House chairman. Now that he's gone, we were getting ready to figure out who was going to be the House chairman, and then COVID hit, and so we'll get back to it. And we do miss the interns. There's a special time during the session when the interns spend a whole week here. Senator Barrow spends a lot of time in her special committee in a public testimony with them, and you better bring about 3 boxes of Kleenex when those kids show up. But some incredible kids, and I mean, you talk about Grambling. We had one last year that was at Notre Dame. I mean they're doing some incredible work. I hope and pray that we can get back to the numbers on the adoptions that y'all have been, and again, for the newer members, DCFS has been leading the nation in foster care adoptions for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's just done some phenomenal numbers. So you got about almost 4,000 kids in foster care.
Yes, sir.
But you've been averaging about 900 adoptions a year. So that's almost 25% of your foster kids that you're putting into a permanent home.
Yes.
So let's do it. Secretary, I hope we can find the money to do this. I mean, this is critical when you're dealing with child welfare. I mean, we throw away millions of dollars in this process, as members know, and I just hope we can help you find that and get to that. So thank all your staff. I can't even imagine what y'all been through the last couple of months. I can't. But y'all have done an incredible job. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. I've been here since 1996. My hair was this color when I came here. Look at it now. So it's what government does to you. But I've been through a lot of administrations, a lot of secretaries, a lot of staff. But today, your agency is in the best position that it's ever been in terms of services. When we call and ask for help, we get it. We get a response. We don't get a runaround. We may not always get what we want to hear, but we get an honest answer, and we get an honest effort from your staff. So they just do great work. So thank you for your leadership and what you're doing, and thank you for what you do for the kids. I know where your heart is.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Senator Johns, thank you. Senator Cloud.
That was I felt like a great closing, Senator Johns. It's hard to go into questioning now. Congratulations, Secretary.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a question. I know there's a few questions. On the SNAP, elimination of the SNAP Fraud and Abuse Detection and Prevention Fund. So it was a statutory dedication that it looks like has been changed. Remove the funding for
It was completely eliminated, yes, ma'am.
That was, if I can carry, that was a bill that was passed in 2012, 2013, where a taxpayer could make a donation, on your Louisiana tax to the fund. And we raised, I think, $2,000 a couple of years in a row. So it was eliminated from the form by LDR. So there was zero revenue associated with that.
But
So
it was a fraud and abuse and detection fund?
Yes, but that was a donation, that one. We have a fraud fund that is funded through when we recover, when we do investigation, we recover depending whether if it's an administrative error, whether if it's fraud, there's a certain percentage that we keep. So we have a fund like that. This one was simply people making a donation, of their tax return, and we never collected on that. So we had $10,000 for years in budget authority, but zero revenue. So when the subcommittee reviewing the stat debt met, they offered to eliminate it, and we didn't oppose it because there's no way right now to donate for it because LDR took it out of the tax form.
Okay. So in removing that, you didn't remove, you still have intact a program that searches out for fraud and abuse.
No, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. We have a different stat debt where we're collecting from the investigation and the recovery. And we have, I think, last time I checked, around $3.5 million, and we're spending around $800,000 from that fund. But we have a unit, fraud and recovery unit.
How many people work for that unit?
I know you were asking that. Look, if you give me a minute, I think it's in the 20. I have it here in some of my paper. Give me a second. I would say 22, but...
It's not a big group.
And I bring that up because anytime there's fraud and abuse in these systems, it hurts the people that really need it.
Sure.
And I used to not need my glasses when I first came here, but now I need 32 people.
32.
Yeah.
And it's an active unit that...
Yes, yes. We have won several awards for that. It's very efficient. We have GIS system. We do a lot of data matching, about these people. It's very efficient.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Senator Henry.
Yeah, on your COVID, did you all receive direct funding? You all didn't receive any? What kind of COVID expenses are you all looking at?
Okay, that's my overshoot. We have around, I can tell you because
it's close.
We have around $2 million, $2.2 million of what we call ESF6, which is directive sheltering, that's FEMA reimbursable. And we're running around $7 million of non-FEMA reimbursable, most of it associated with SNAP.
So around 10 million.
Yes, but I distinguish the two because the FEMA reimbursement is going to be 75 federal, 25 state.
Unless we bump it up to 90, right? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
From what I understand, we're still at 75, 25.
Okay.
And SNAP is 50-50. So we're looking at 7 million, of SNAP-related expenditures. We would be 3.5 million state general fund.
Okay, and so none of that is coming out of CARES or anything?
No.
You're not getting any reimbursement?
No.
I think she's trying to tell you.
Yeah, no, she's saying we received some CARES, but it's not related to the COVID really directly. We did receive some funds. We received a little bit over $700,000 for child welfare services and $440,000 for domestic violence.
And that was CARES funding?
Yes.
And that came, so you did receive some CARES funding from the department, about, what was that, till about $1 million, you think?
Yeah, exactly,
Okay.
1.1.
1.1 million of CARES, and then you have the others, which is going to require some type of matching along the way.
Yes.
Either 25/7 or a match.
Yeah.
For your request, there's obviously 45 TOs that are tied directly to federal funding. When the federal funding goes away, we would anticipate the TOs to go away as well, correct?
That funding is not going away.
Gotcha. But I mean, that would be the logic.
Yeah.
They're tied to
it's
that.
TANF. 40 positions are related to TANF. TANF is not going away.
Right, but the funding source is it's a federal grant that you're going to use to pay for these, correct?
Yes.
Right, it's TANF funds and SNAP ENT funds.
Gotcha.
And that's where Congress is really pushing more and more employment and training.
So
in SNAP.
as long as that continues at 45. Now for the 50, the note I have here is you have 177 vacant positions now.
Yep.
What is the value of that?
Hello?
What do you mean by that?
The salaries associated with those 177 positions. If they
Well,
were
I mean-
all filled today, what would it cost us?
I mean, if you could multiply.
I mean, I'm assuming they're funded positions, they're funded TOs,
Yeah.
so there's a dollar amount associated with
I
those.
don't know. I mean, if you go and you multiply with benefits, it's around the average of the department, 83,000. I mean, I don't know what the number. I cannot do it in my.
I'm glad that you mentioned this. I have a real problem, Senator, with the,
That'd be about 14.6 million?
Yes.
14.7.
But I mean, also, I mean, it's not that money is necessarily available because of attrition, you know, so.
if we talk about our vacancies and we talk about more TO, I have been told consistently the whole time I've been here, if I just fill my vacancies, I wouldn't need more people. But that we are filling these vacancies. Out of this, where's the number, 100 and however many there are.
It's 177.
There are 43 of those that are DDS, the developmental disability. That's 100% federal, and they do those hires. So I can't fill those. The feds have locked those out. So that drops me down to an attrition to a vacancy rate of about 4.5%,
That's about
which is
134
well
people, right?
within any business on the face of the earth that has a vacancy rate. And if I had 10 people and one was out on FMLA and one was pregnant and one got transferred, I would have 7 people working, right? But if I only had 5 people and those same 3 things happened, I would only have 2 people working. So the number of people I have is important. In 2008,
Well, it's not the number of people, it's the number, I mean, the number of people you have is very important, but it's obviously we all know the budget issue, and if you're looking for 50 slots and you have 134 that are funded, can we start with those and then, I mean, do we have to, are you holding off on hiring the other 50 until you get it? Because if the funding, I'm assuming, and that's an $83,000 salary, which maybe not everybody makes $83,000.
Oh,
so
no.
you're around
Benefits,
everything else. So
because
it's
you're-
about
yeah.
$14 million. If you take the 2.2 that you're looking for, that's already in there. And I know you need flexibility. We get that. But the fact that you're going to add 50 plus another 45 plus another 5, that's 100 people, 100 TOs you're looking for, given the state, the feds are going to pay for half. Mm-hmm. If you could use your existing TOs to cover some of that, just any of it, that would, I mean, we all want to help you with everything, but we also, everybody came before you needed help, and everybody, and I promise you that group coming tomorrow, LDH, sure. they are not coming with ideas on how to save money. So we want to make sure that it's a possibility. Just help us with that. That's all I'm asking for.
Let me say this. Every single one of our vacancies is in the process of being filled. I have, out of the 13, where is that page that tells me? 15% of them are less than a month old. 52% of them are less than 3 months old.
When you say less, I mean they've been on the job?
Yeah.
Right.
Or they've been vacant for 3
They've been
months?
vacant.
Okay.
And
We've been vacant for a month. So somebody quit and we're posting and looking. 15%. We are filling these positions as fast as we can. We slowed down during COVID, of course, and so we have some that are lagging, but we don't have anything open that has been open for any long period of time. We are filling constantly. And so that's why I get so angst about if I just filled them, I wouldn't need more, because we are filling them as fast as we possibly can, and it's still not enough. I'm always going to have a vacancy.
Of course.
I'm always going to have vacancy. And I think running a 4% vacancy rate in a department as big as ours is pretty dang good. And since we're not holding anything, there aren't any vacancies that you could say, well, you haven't filled that in a year, so just sweep it out. If I had those, I'd give them to you. But I don't. I'm constantly filling. We just don't have enough people to do the work. And part of the reason we have the turnover that we have is because the job is so hard and people burn out. And so they leave. And they can go work at Costco, make as much money and not have nearly the stress. So it's and or. It's not either or. It's and both. I need more people, and we're filling as fast as we can.
Gotcha. Okay. Just another way to look at it. That's all. When we're trying to piece this puzzle together. And it is unfortunate that the interns won't be here, because every year for the past 4 years I've taken them to lunch.
And
that's
they've
really been a lot.
always enjoyed that.
We've had a lot of fun doing that, and then we kind of bounced around the Capitol together. So there was a Fletcher, there was
Yep.
there was who was the one who worked for the
Well, Jarvis is the one with Fletch the first year. He's
Right.
the one that just graduated from Grambling.
from Graham, because he wanted to
With
go
math.
into
Social work.
and then there was a young lady that worked for you.
He?
What was her name?
Keedy.
Keedy, yes.
Keedy.
Keedy used, because I used to not to say this in a negative way, folks. When Keedy used to sit behind you and try to
That's right.
testify, and when I needed to convince someone on the committee that I needed to do something for you, I would not let the secretary speak. I would let Keedy speak, because she could.
Right.
She just had a better way with the members and much more. She just had a way about her, and if you met her, you would appreciate it, that she was able to get things done
That's right.
much more efficiently than anybody else, because she had lived it. She had gone through the process. She literally had lived it in a way that you all would never want to know, but she had lived it, so she was pretty cool. So thanks.
I will pass that along. Keedy is a new mama
Really?
or about to be a new mother. Any day now. Yep.
You done, Senator? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Senator Barrow.
Okay, for all the new members, you guys are going to really enjoy the interns when they come next year. They are a ball, and I'm telling you, you learn so much. And to hear their personal testimony and how they have been able to overcome the challenges is just phenomenal. But Madam Secretary, I want to commend you and your entire staff on such a job well done. For all the new members, I also want you to know that I call them the heart of state government because of the level of work and the intensity of the work that they have to do. I'm really wondering how are your people holding up? I mean, it's been a lot. And now with the hurricane, right on our heels, I'm sure that your people are really tired.
Thank you so much, Senator, and we will pass that along. We have a leadership call with our leaders every week right now, and there are some that are struggling, there are some that are afraid, there are some that have underlying conditions that are worried about what it'll be like to come back into the office. We're really evaluating how we do the work, and if everybody does need to be in the office. There are positions that have done beautifully at home, and so maybe they're never going to come back to the office. But I would say by and large, our staff is rocking and rolling, just doing their work.
Well, I want them to know how much we appreciate all that they're doing, and all the foster parents who have done a marvelous job in keeping all their kids safe during COVID-19. I did want to kind of speak to the slide 13 because it kind of came up, I think, with Senator Henry as he was talking about trying to do with the TOs and everything. And so the turnover rate is pretty significant because at the end of the day, what's the average rate of pay?
Okay. No, it differs by division, I think, from what you're asking. No, in child welfare, the average salary is around $45,000.
Okay.
And
But that's not the entry
that's
rate.
the average.
That's the average.
yeah.
Yes.
And family support is around 42. No, when you're looking at an entry level, you're looking at $31,000.
Right, and that's with a bachelor's degree,
That's what I thought.
$30,000 to come in to do this work with a bachelor's degree.
And is that child welfare or family?
That is the child welfare
Fair.
side.
And family?
It's very
Support.
similar. It's around 1,100 biweekly. So
Okay.
you multiply 26. It's the entry level end up being fairly similar.
Okay, so we're talking about just $30,000. So they are serving some of our most vulnerable families, and they themselves are just a little bit above
Right.
the poverty line themselves in many cases. And so, with a degree,
With a degree,
because that's a requirement, correct?
it is.
So let me ask you: does civil service kind of tie your hands in terms of your ability to be able to do more?
I think that we are looking right now. We've worked really closely with civil service over the past 4 years, and they've been really helpful with us. So I won't say they tie our hands. I think our whole schedule of pay for child welfare is low, and we're working with civil service with that to just do a whole study of the whole schedule to see if we can't raise that up. I know there was a big push last year to get the social workers in schools to get them up to 50,000, and we were just astonished because we'd love to have that kind of level, so I think our whole schedule is low in child welfare, but I won't say they tie our hands because they've been great partners. They've really worked well with us.
So what's the turnover rate?
Last year was 17%.
17?
17, yeah.
Okay.
Which you remember, Senator, when we came only in Baton Rouge, so not totally, but in the Baton Rouge region in child welfare, the turnover rate was 50%.
Right.
And then we got down to about 25% across the board. But so that's been a massive amount of work, just trying to make people feel valued and respected and heard. And your visit, many of you did this when we went across the state and met with legislators and brought them in to meet with our staff. And when we go around the state and hold our community gatherings and legislators come, it means a lot to our staff to know that they have the support from the legislature. And when you sit at the mic and say something like, we're the heart of the state agency, or Ronnie Johns says that, we're leading the nation in adoption and we're setting these records, staff hear that because they listen to these testimonies. And I get so many text and email after our committee hearings because they go, oh, they really are paying attention. They really do know about us. They're giving us compliments. And so it really helps build the morale. And I think that we've done a good job over this first term of helping our people feel valued and respected. They'd like to see it in their paychecks, of course, but I think that the morale of the agency is better than it was, and that's reflected in the turnover rate.
And I know, now I agree with you on that. I know that you've done a lot of innovative things that didn't cost money.
Right.
Employee of the month, giving us special parking places, all that stuff made a big difference. And so I definitely commend you on that. I do want to ask you about the number of employees, because is it 45 plus the 5 that we will not pay for? Is it 50 plus the 5?
So it's 45 in family support.
Okay.
So on that side of the house, and that's all federal money. So you will not pay for those 45. That's TO that we need just to do the work.
Okay.
That comes with the federal dollar. And then on the child welfare side, it's 50 new TO that we need the money for, and that's 2.2 state general fund that then we will match with the federal fund.
And just very quickly, Senator Barrow, those 45 are already built into the proposed budget for FY21.
Okay.
They're in there.
Okay, so it's just the 50 then?
50 is, right.
Just the 2.2 million?
But we need the TO. We've got to have that TO.
Okay, gotcha.
So is workforce, when we look at them, they're going to have a reduction of 45 TOs?
I couldn't speak to that. I don't do...
They were using job appointments. That's
Okay.
part of the reason the program wasn't really successful, is because...
I heard you say that, but...
So they won't have a reduction because they were
Right.
using job appointments.
It won't show up in their TO.
They were not using TOs to do
Right.
the program.
They were using contractors?
No, job appointments. They didn't get TOs when they tried to administer the
Right,
program,
right.
and that's what contributed to the turnover that they had.
Okay.
So just going back, child welfare are the ones who actually take care of, do the complaints, take care of the families, when there's abuse cases. And so this is a really important position. I mean, this is extremely important.
And we will spread those across, so that's everything from the child abuse investigation, going out in the home, to the foster care staff, the adoption staff, and the home development staff, the people that go out and find the foster homes. So we would spread those 50 TO across all parts of child welfare.
I know that we are tight for money, and I agree with Senator Johns. You know, $2.2 million is a lot, but it's not a lot.
Right.
And I believe that we have to make that investment for our most vulnerable citizens, those who cannot help themselves. And so I will be joining him and the rest of my colleagues to make sure that we do everything we can to find that money. Thank you. Thank your entire staff for a great job, and welcome. We look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We got one more, Senator Abraham. Wait a minute, let me get you on. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, y'all do really an excellent job at your department. You know, the last few days I've been my mind has been changing a little bit because I hear what you said about your frustration with funded but not filled positions. Okay, that's been a theme that started in the House and has been going on for 4 years. And I must say that I was buying into the other side. You've convinced me, I don't know about other departments, but you've convinced me that you don't have that big gap of funded not filled in your department, because I'm actually believing what you're saying here, and had some other conversations with some of the other staff members. So I'm still, searching through that funded not filled position, which everybody thinks there's a pot of money in there. But anyway, that's another story. Okay, I'm still trying to understand your ask. So you're telling me that the $2.2 million in general fund money is not in this proposed budget right now?
No.
Correct.
But your general fund went up about 1.7 million. Your ask for general fund money is up 1.7 million from FY20.
Absolutely, but that's simply a market adjustment. The staff, all our staff, well, not all of them, all the permanent staff get 2 to 4% a year. So that's really what's pushing it up.
And leases and normal cost of living increase kind of money.
Well, yeah, and I also noticed in the last 3 years, your budget has been off by about $150 million. In other words, you've asked for, in the 700 and something million, but it goes down, the actual goes down to 150 million less, okay? And I'm assuming that's not because you necessarily cut, I guess you did, but you didn't have the dollars coming in. When I looked at it, it seemed like that the majority of that money, that 150 million, looks like about 50 million was in federal funds. So you received, for fiscal year 20 over 19, you received about $55 million more than you had in 19. So that $55 million really helped you out in fiscal year 20. How did you manage when all the other years you didn't have that extra 50 million and your budget was around the 600 million mark, 630 million for 17, 18, and 19. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just trying to, So you managed that for 3 years at the $640 million budget. And so now in 20, it jumped up to the 698, almost 700, jumped up to 698 in that 1 year. And now you want to continue that. I understand that. You're only increasing it by 1 million, but now you're asking another 2.2. So kind of explain, give me some reason why you could manage that extra $50 million cut.
It's the same thing as before. I mean, the 630 was our actual expenditure. The 698 is our budget authority.
Correct.
It's two different things.
Correct, but you had the budget authority for the 698, but you only spent 630, correct?
Yes.
So
and unfortunately, Senator Henry is not here because he's the one who cut us a little bit too much.
Come on here, Cameron Henry, come in here.
I waited 7 hours to argue with him about that.
Yeah.
No, look, we had a lot of excess budget authority in the past. Well, we had all this federal authority because if you have a disaster, we wanted to be able to use that. So we also had some self-generated fund. We were budgeted more than we collect. So that's what in large part was doing, the difference between what we were budgeted and what we expended. Now, we reduced that by $100 million last year. That was a little bit too much. We did have a request, supplemental for $30 million of federal authority because we cannot make it with a $100 million cut. Now, the reason why we don't meet, as you think, the expenditures and the budget are not as close is because, for instance, we have a lot of contracts. And when you have a contract, you don't exactly know where it's going to end up. So you're going to have to budget a little bit more than it is. That's how it works. So we end up having, I think this year we're not going to be as bad because of the cut. But in large part, that's what we have. We don't know exactly how much is going to be expended on each contract, in salaries and so on. So we don't hit the target every time.
But the
But am I
federal
correct in-
authority is the biggest
No,
gap
and,
there.
and I
That's-
understand the authority, but I'm also looking at your funding for 20, and you did receive 50, basically everything else stayed the same roughly. You had 10 million more in state general funds from 19 to 20.
Where do you see that?
I'm on page 4. Under the 19 actual, under 20 enacted, and then FY EOB, and then your proposed 21. So the federal funds from 19 to 20, which is the current year you're in, your federal funds increased by 50 million, and that's how you actually received more money in 2020. Is that correct?
20 again. This is not 20 actuals here. This is the 20 budget.
Well, the 20 enacted, and it also has FY 20 EOB.
Yeah.
Both of them have 457 million of federal money. Did you not receive that, or did you receive it?
That's the authority. It's not what we have received. That's the authority we have. That doesn't mean that we can. A lot of it has to do with match. Some of it we know exactly how we're gonna get, like TANF, for instance. But a lot of it is match. 4E, Title 4E is a match we have for foster care. We have 4D for child support enforcement. That.
So no, because the previous 3 years, 17, 18, and 19 on page 22, your actual federal money was around 400 million, right?
Yes,
Now you might have
yes.
budgeted more, but you only got 400 million in federal money.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why your budget was around 780, but you spent about 630 because a lot of the federal money did not come through.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, in 20, is this federal money coming through, and is that 457, that extra $55 million, is that real money, or is you did not receive that?
Well, we're still in the process, so we cannot tell you until we close the book. We're going to be closer than we used to. Whether we're at 457, we're going to be pretty close, we think, this year. But
So that means you had an extra 50 million for FY 20 compared to 19, and this year you've had an extra 50 million. Instead of spending 630 million like in 19, you might spend 680 million in FY 20.
yeah, I think
If that money comes through.
yes.
So I'm asking, what did you do with that extra 50 million in FY 20?
Well, a lot of it, and that's something that Travis mentioned earlier, the reason we were so low, for instance, so far also in 19, is because we received a lot of invoices late. So we had to basically pay them in 20 instead of 19. Then the rest of it, it's a match. It could be salaries, it could be contract. That's basically with a match, when we have the state general fund expenditures, we can match, then we draw down the federal fund.
I wonder how much was carried over from the previous year. I wonder how much that was. I mean, you had increased dollars in this year. If it was because of the carry forward, I understand that. But if it was actually extra federal money, then you evidently filled some salaries and expenses from that extra federal money. And so look, I'm just throwing that out.
Senator Abrams, hi, I'm Terry Ricks, Deputy Secretary. Wanted to just be able to address a little bit the difference between revenue coming in and actual authority to spend, and the way that we actually had to decrease some contracts in order to get in some grant money because we didn't have enough federal authority. Some of our contracts are, and some of our expenditures, we're not going to know how much we're actually going to spend because it's going to depend on the number of clients and the type of clients that come in. Some of our contracts for child support enforcement, for example, it depends on how much we're going to actually use that depending on how many clients, how many child support enforcement runs we're going to make for collections. We don't know that. We don't know how many kids we're actually going to come in. We don't know which one of those children in the child support, on child welfare are actually going to be 4E eligible. Some of them are not. And so some of the federal authority that we have is so that if there is new federal expenditure to be made, that we can actually pull that federal fund in. And so when we made a calculation with you guys last year, as we were going through this process, how much federal authority do we think we may have that is what we would consider to be truly excess, right? We said 60. Mm-hmm. Y'all took 100.
No,
and so then we had to go back because the practicality is sometimes it seems like we're talking about federal revenue. It's not revenue. It's an expenditure authority so that if we need it, we can have it.
Yeah, and I understand that very clearly. Okay, I understand the difference of federal authority and the spending. I guess I'm just asking, of the $457 million that is budgeted for this year, I mean, we're almost at the end of the year, so it seems like you would know, is that actually extra authority, or did you actually receive some of those dollars? That's all. That's what I'm trying to ask. Was it more than you had last year?
So when you know that we're not going to receive it until we spend it. And so a lot of our contracts, like for example, LA4, the pre-K program, we don't have all the invoices in for that program yet. So we don't know how much we're going to spend yet.
But the year's going to end in like 30 days.
We are really, that closeout period is extremely important for the school districts, and it's the same for our other federal contracts. So all the TANF grant, all of that, the contracts that we have with LSU, the contracts that we have with Southern, the contracts we have with all the school districts, and I promise you, sometimes the school districts, they're a few months behind getting in, and I would imagine the same would be for COVID. So it seems like we should know, and so we project, but we really do have to wait until the actuals come in to know how much we really are going to spend.
And again, I'm just trying to understand it. This is not a trick question or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed, like I do a lot of budgets, and I just assumed that by this time you would know if you got the 50 million in. And so I said, well, if you did get the 50 million in, where did it go and how did you manage it? Because you're asking for 2.2 million more now from state general fund. And so I was just trying to understand that. So what you're saying is you might not even know if you can draw down on that extra, whatever portion that 50 million is, until at the very end of the year.
Right. So the expenditure has to happen, and then it comes in, and then we pull the federal down, right? So but if I don't have the authority, then I'm not going to be able to pull the federal in.
Pull that down.
Revenue.
When you pull that revenue down from the feds, would that help with these loss of TOs that you're talking about? That wouldn't affect more dollars that you can spend on salary positions?
No, sir.
No, it's
not a revenue generator for us.
It's just a program, and your own people still manage that same program, I guess, if you draw down an extra $50 million.
Right. It would just be because of the work that we've already put into contracts. We've already contracted it. So that the extra, like for a contract for like LA4, my salary is not at all touched by that. That is based on the pre-K contracts with all of the superintendents throughout the state and how they're using the money. So we're just passing it through to them.
And I should add, a lot of the federal funds are very restricted used. So if we have $10 left at the end of the year or something, you're thinking, why don't you use it for salaries? We cannot do that.
Yeah,
We cannot
you
do
can't.
that. We cannot do that.
So that
We-
drawdown.
They can only
is
use the
for-
$10 for Tanner purposes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So-
okay.
And it's the same with a lot of the
I
funds.
said
So-
Tanner, I meant Tanner.
So that's
Tyler.
how the majority of the federal money would work. It would be for a particular program, not necessarily on.
Yeah, you
said that
can't
from the
cross
beginning.
use them
Just at
because
the
you'll have to
beginning, we
pay
could
them back.
adjourn the meeting earlier.
Yes.
Okay.
We can send you a list if you want of all these different federal funding and their match so you understand where it comes
Okay.
from.
All right, well, I just felt I had to ask those
I
questions.
just, if you would, we have a, well, I don't know if Mark's ever been on, I think he was on appropriation before, but we think we're going to have a daunting task come next year when we try to figure that next budget out, okay? So we're trying to look at every way we can save dollars and save TOs if we have them and we don't have to fill them. So just you're going to have to bear with us, okay?
Oh, really?
Okay, I got one more, and then we're going to
Thank you, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Abraham. Senator Henry.
Yeah, I was just, this was more for Travis, just because he was at the table and everything else. And it's more of a point for going forward. This existing, this EOB as of 12/1/19,
Yes, sir.
members are using that, and it just caught us in a bind right here because we're looking at it as that's the exact money that's coming in, and it's not, it's a general, but it's not accurate. And I know we pressed upon getting a more accurate number, but if you can work to get us that number, we have a month left of the year to get us a more accurate number. I think it would solve a lot of the problems we're having because we're trying to compare actuals to actuals, and I know you don't have them, but we got to be closer than December to make it a little bit easier moving forward. We don't have to, it's not you know what I mean? We're just, because members are picking up going, oh wait, you had this amount, now you have this, oh, you're good to go. And if
Well, and I think to contribute to this conversation, following up on Senator Abraham's question, when we build the budget and we come to committee to present the budget, we fully fund all the TO filled and vacant positions. We fully fund those in there. And as they move throughout the year and they manage their agency, they have vacancies, which of course the Secretary testified to, at the difficulty of maintaining those people. So in the event that as they have some people come on and they have people walk out the door because they're leaving for whatever reason, that's going to contribute to the question that Senator Abraham was asking about. That's one of the potential issues that the Secretary is having to work through as she manages her department.
Yeah, we just got to get a more accurate number. And I know it's going to fluctuate, but we got to find some way to get closer since we're almost at the end of the fiscal year. That's all. Cool. Thank you.
Wait, Travis, absolutely. One more 1 minute questions. Senator Cloud.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Travis, I'm sorry. I know you're as exhausted or more exhausted than we are. And Sherry and Jess, I mean, I know that you ladies have worked so hard. Thank you for everything and what you'll continue to do for us. Senator Abraham and I were talking, and he asked me to ask you these questions. So what we noticed earlier, and we went through a lot of departments, a lot of agencies really quickly over, today and yesterday. What I noticed and what he noticed, and he brought this up whenever we were on the OJJ, what I'm concerned about is when we're looking at the FY19, the FY enacted, and then we're looking at a snapshot of December and FY20 EOB. And the thing is, we see this big difference between this big jump from what was actual in 19, a jump from what 20 was enacted, and then what 20 was in December. And then what I'm concerned about is, in this case, we're making decisions on a budget proposal for the snapshot in December from the EOB. And what if there was one-time money that came in that drove it up from what was enacted and then what was mid-year, and then all of a sudden what's proposed is based on maybe one-time money, and so we start growing government that way?
Whenever we do, that's one of the things we do look at internally when we build the budget at the budget office. That is something we look at to see and adjust for in those adjustments that you see in the proposed budget. So we do look at that when we build the budget. So that is part of the conversation that does occur in the fall when we do build the budget. We look for those things to see, all right, is this revenue source going away? All right, if so, the decision point is, all right, legislature or governor, do you want to use general fund to fund that item, or do you want to cut the item? So that is part of the overall building of the budget process that we go through, and that exercise we go through whenever we present it to the legislature.
Had we caught it earlier, we could have been asking you this on every budget that we looked at, like this OJJ situation where it jumped up by, I don't know, $5 million, and then they're asking for an additional $5 million. So I'm just concerned. And we'll know to ask this in the future, and we may look back at some of the things we've done so far since yesterday. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Travis.
You're welcome.
Okay, just 1 second, Travis. Sherry asked me to ask you this question about TANF and matches and a few other things, so it'll take 20, 30 minutes maybe, okay?
Yes, sir.
I think we're adjourned. Thank y'all.